Tara, so maybe we could, you know, the next time you're up, give me a call. And we'll say,
Yeah, Apple Help. You do the same thing. You call the guy, he tells you to do it, and it works. Right, because they know what's going on.
so we're up on Zoom, or we up on YouTube?
Zoom and up on YouTube.
All right, everybody, it is 3:03. That clock is always wrong.
Yes, it is.
Has been for as long as I know. 3:03 p.m. and we are calling this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. First thing we have is privilege of the floor. We have some.
Eric,
Yes.
Eric is here for
do
an
that.
agenda item.
Yeah.
And Lisa, also, we have an agenda item for Lisa. Tom's here for the chapel committee as well.
Well, why don't we
So-
start out? So Lisa, you don't have to stay for the entire meeting. I believe Lisa is here because we're planning to appoint her to the planning board. Is that correct?
That's correct, as an alternate.
All right, so I would like to propose that we appoint Lisa to the planning board as an alternate. Can I have a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All
There
right,
you go, Lisa.
all right,
That's
Lisa.
that's very quick. We had a chance to talk to Wendy and everything, so you are all set. You are an alternate on the planning board, and we'll get you some information.
Okay, great.
All
Thank
right.
My condolences.
Yes,
As a member of the board.
yes, as someone with experience on the board.
you. Good. Thank
And
you.
we love that you're there.
I'm sure you do.
Because it means that we are.
Exactly.
Yes,
All right. and
exactly.
So we'll get you all the information in time for the May meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Look at Jim the way he is right now. It looks like he has a very long white beard. Did you see what he
Jeez. It's a white beard. It's just not very long.
Let's see, why don't we go ahead and jump down the agenda and let Eric do the chapel committee presentation. For those of you listening out there, this is kind of a pre-pleasant presentation before our May 11th meeting so that the public has the opportunity to see a little bit ahead of time what the chapel committee is proposing to do. So take it away, Eric.
Sure. Did we have?
We have it. We're going to be putting it up.
Wonderful.
And this will be part of the YouTube live stream as
Can people call in questions?
well. We have a chat function
Okay.
with the YouTube, and Judy is watching that upstairs.
Yes, and we also are on Zoom. Was it more people got
No,
an
the
invitation?
participants
Okay,
are on Zoom.
okay.
Let's see this
Yeah, that's it.
one.
Yeah.
Voila.
There you go. I think you all have seen the drawing before. But this will more be just a second walkthrough and for those who haven't.
This camera is rather large on my. Okay.
There. we go.
All right. Hopefully, I'll do my best to project. Hopefully, the microphone will pick me up over there. Oh, it's over
We
there.
got
as
a
well.
good one.
Great. So I'll just walk through the overview. The chapel, the proposed chapel, situated close to this rendering, it's a memorial chapel for Robert Francis Kennedy, and it's kind of a cohesive vision that him and Tom Corcoran had. That he basically put aside a fund many years ago when RFK was assassinated for a memorial chapel for him in the valley. So this is kind of the full cycle back to basically implementing that vision. So if we go to the next slide. So this is a direct quote from Tom about what he imagined this chapel to be. And we really use it for inspiration throughout the design. You know, something that's bold and modern, but also fits in and kind of is consistent with the vision for the valley in the future. And we kept the material palette very simple, just stone, wood, and glass, in keeping with his language and with the vernacular of the valley itself. Next slide. So the location right now, it's currently really there's really not much there besides the walking path, the cross-country ski trail, and our access road. It's adjacent to Corcoran's Pond, in between Corcoran's Pond and the Golden Eagle Lodge, where that blue dot is now. So that's the proposed site. Next slide. So throughout the design, we drew from the natural elements of the valley and kind of the immediate natural elements around the site. Very, very conscientiously thought about the sun and where it is and how it can interact with the chapel, the water itself, and how we can have the chapel interact with the pond and kind of bring the pond up to the chapel and chapel down to the pond and kind of have that be a cohesive back and forth. We thought about access and movement, that bottom left-hand diagram, and how you can really get into the chapel from multiple angles and direction. And finally, we thought about the views of Mount Osceola. So from the site, the views of Osceola are pretty spectacular, and we really wanted to highlight that through the design. So those are some of the major design factors. If we go to the next slide. So here's a floor plan of the proposed chapel. So we've done, you'll see there's a walking path that is something that is kind of a future design element that hasn't yet been fully approved, but we've been very cognizant of the site and how it sits with relation to the valley and kind of the future plans for the valley, and tried to stitch it in and weave it in as much as possible. You can see that the XC trail is still there. It's just rerouted kind of around the chapel. Off to the far left, there's a big boulder kind of hiding in the woods there that we're hoping to expose and celebrate. And you can approach the chapel, and there's this forecourt area that's connected to an outdoor terrace, which you can have, there'll be sliding doors that could open so that you could have people sitting outside being able to kind of be part of whatever service or ceremony is going on inside. I don't think I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it now. This is a multi-faith chapel. It's not associated with any specific denomination or group. It's really open-ended. It's more meant as a place that's just spiritual and meaningful, and it's meant to serve the people of the valley, kind of create a home and a place for those types of events in that way. There is a central nave that goes down from the main entrance to the south. So south is actually on our left as we're looking at this now. And in the back, there's kind of two bars of service rooms. One is a storage room, and the other is mechanical. And that could shift depending on how the future design moves forward. And then there's an altar in the front with a stormwater collection pond that could double as a reflecting pool. One thing you'll notice on the top of the screen or to the west is a big bar of a wall there. And what that is, if you go to the next slide, it's a timeline for Bobby Kennedy. So it's basically a linear timeline of his life that will have inspirational quotes or just things that have happened in his life, kind of outside to inside, outside the chapel. So you can kind of follow along and be able to be inspired and kind of and learn more about his life chronologically. You can experience that whether or not you go inside the chapel. And the final piece would be like a smaller element out in the pond to kind of mimic the stones that are out in the pond adjacent to it. Next slide. And here's a transverse cross section to that looking out. So the structure itself was designed to mimic Osceola. So we took the angles of the mountains and integrated them into the truss structure to really tie this view into the way you're experiencing the interior space. And that entire northern facade is glass to be able to maximize views out in that direction. Next slide. I think you missed one.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go. So there's that view from the interior. Those columns will likely actually be a little bit smaller than that. These are an early rendering. Chapel seats approximately 120 people. It's roughly between 1,800 and 2,000 square feet, depending on a couple things we're still working out. The doors to the right, like I mentioned earlier, can almost fully open for that facade. So you can have that patio basically become part of the inner chapel. There's a small band of windows on the left to give you a little bit of relief on that side as well. Next slide. And just thinking about how this would contribute to the valley, how it would be kind of this beacon and lantern on the pond that would provide a sense of warmth and place and kind of accentuate this really special nook in the valley that right now is really not fully utilized like it could be. Next slide. Here's the entrance from the south. You can see the patio off to the right with a gap in the timeline that you can walk through to the left, and then there's that main entrance right in the center of the southern facade. Next. And there is a view from Corcoran's Pond looking back up at the chapel like you're in a kayak or a paddle boat. Next. So I think that's it.
Anybody have any questions for her?
I've got a couple, Mike.
Yeah. Well, Eric, first of all, I want to commend you. I think this is a superb job,
Thanks,
a
Mike.
superb concept. I think it's beautiful. It's really outstanding. The concerns and questions I have are with cost, payment, operations. One thing I'm not seeing in there is any source of water.
Yeah.
Coming into the building, how are you going to even clean it without any water? Because we're dealing with the same issue with our bathhouse.
Yeah.
With water. So I think that really has got to be figured into things. The approximate size of the shop, you said about 2,000 square feet. So what are you figuring dimensioning wise? Width, length and width is?
It's about 45 by 90.
Yeah. Okay. And the other stuff, the question is really, I don't know if you can answer the questions. I've asked in the past if you would go out and get easements or documents from Tyrell and from Golden Eagle stating their intention to proceed with you guys and be a partner and allow parking there.
Yeah.
You know, we really need to see these kinds of things. And especially one of the things that concerns me is, you know, besides where is the money, how much money you've got, and how are you going to sustain it, is who's going to manage this and is there going to be a succession plan? Because most of the people that I know on the committee of this are my contemporaries. And I don't know how long we're all going to be around here, either in the valley or anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's just an idea of what's going to happen to this, because the concern that I've gotten from a bunch of residents in town has been what happens to this, you know, is the town going to have to take this over and this is going to be a town building eventually? And it's going to be the town supporting it, where the town has had to support other properties in the past. So I think to make a better presentation at town meeting, these questions are going to be asked. And I think you're going to have really strong answers for this, or we're going to be talking about this for an hour at town meeting. So I've asked for this in the past, and I just hope you can get it together and make the presentation that will sell this to the people, or maybe it's not the right time for this. But I do have to compliment you on a beautiful job with this.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that, and those are great questions.
I can answer the easement, Eric.
I'll go for it, Tom.
Yeah, so I've had several conversations with the Golden Eagle Board of Directors, and they said that they would send me a letter, as did Tyrell. So we have verbal commitments from them for the easements. And we just have not received it in writing yet. So
Okay.
I
we're
think we
following
really
up
have
on that, and we
very
hopefully will have that at least for the town meeting.
That's good. I didn't know you were that far along with that, Tom.
What about money,
Yes.
Tom?
Money? Well, I mean, that's the big issue. I mean, when we started this project, I mean, and getting Eric, it morphed into this beautiful structure. So as you know, I mean, it's going to be it's a pretty hefty price tag. And so we do our due diligence with our fundraising and see what we get. I mean, I've had a couple people mention that they would possibly give us a significant amount of funds for this, but I'll believe it when I see it. So we know that's going to be a challenge to not only raise the money for the construction of this project, but we need a significant amount to maintain it for future maintenance. So when we add that in, it's substantial, but we'll see what we can do with our fundraising efforts. And I think the bathrooms, you know, the committee had talked about kind of piggybacking on the town's construction of the bathhouse on the beach, on the pond, and using that. The water issue that kind of really just came to our attention on that separately. So we're discussing that, and I'm sure we'll have some conversations with Jim and Mark concerning that issue. And Eric, if you have any other thoughts there.
Yeah, I think the water question is very much tied up with the bathhouse discussion, and because there is no water down at that level right now, adjacent to the pond, there has to be a pump station created to get it down there, which might happen with the bathhouse. So I think it's kind of all tied up in that discussion. And one thing we could look into, you know, for cleaning, it's a great point. You know, maybe and we do have that, you know, stormwater retention reflecting pool in the front. You know, maybe there is a pump down to the pond just to get some water up for cleaning.
Where do you discharge it? Yeah, because that's the issue we have
Yeah,
with the bathhouses.
with the bathhouses. we can
Getting
get
the water there, we can always run pipes. Getting the wastewater away is the issue.
Right.
Gray
Right.
water, wastewater. And that, I mean, if you don't have an actual pipe for the wastewater, then you're going to be looking at some sort of septic system
Yeah.
requirement and that
And you're
sort
too
of
close
thing.
to the pond.
That uses
Yeah.
more land and everything else. So it's just something we're going to have got to address.
Yep.
And
I think all those questions can be addressed. I think the one question that is a little more difficult to address at the town meeting or pretty much any time, as Mike mentioned, is what happens if, you know, if something happens 10 years from now and the funds are there. I don't know if we'd have an answer for it.
Because it's for the same reason
Yeah,
that
we can't give you the land.
yeah, we can't give you the land. The town
Right.
can't
That's the
run
only
it.
reason I'm asking, Tom, because it can't be assumed because of the nature.
Right.
yeah, as a religious organization, the town can't assume the operation of the chapel, you know, without turning it into a non-religious facility.
Which
like
you could
conference center,
could
house.
potentially do, right?
Well, it depends on the building, because one of the
It
issues that
depends on
came
the
up in the court case in Massachusetts was it had an altar and the spire, and they tried to say it wasn't a
church.
church.
Right.
And
So the actual wording is that this would authorize the Board of Selectmen to negotiate the terms and conditions. So as part of this, there'd be, if town meeting approved the warrant article, we would be looking at other public hearings and a final vote where these questions would have to be addressed and discussed and answered
Right, but,
before we could actually
Concretely.
enter the
but the reason,
purchase and sale.
the reason I'm bringing this up is I believe there needs to be a good foundation to these questions, which will come up at the town meeting, so it doesn't get voted down.
Right.
You know, there's all kinds of space going forward to negotiate and figure everything out. Key is to get this approved at town meeting. And the key to getting it approved at town meeting is having good answers for these questions, because you know, a lot of these questions I've gotten from townspeople who've asked me to ask these questions. I'm not this smart.
I've got just a couple of questions as well. One for me, actually. I was sent a couple of questions also from a town resident. First of all, I think it would be very helpful in your presentation, in light of what Mike was saying about doing everything you can to get the approval from town meeting, to make the point that the Pond Loop cross-country trail will be intact.
Okay.
It's not really clear from your presentation in terms of like where there's a little thing that says Pond Loop, and when I first looked at it, I said, okay, where is that thing? And
Yep.
So that might be useful just to make a positive statement to that effect. Am I correct? Did I see a stone pillar in the pond as part of the?
Yes.
As part of the
I did it too.
No, there's just one.
Just
one? Yeah, there's one connected to church, one on the land, and one
That's right.
in the pond. Does that change anything? Because is that part of the land where we would be selling, where that pillar is located? It's in the pond.
Right, it is not part of the parcel that we are,
Selling.
but it doesn't, I mean, there's no prohibition for putting a stone or something.
Pillar,
like
is
that
it, what's going to be
in there.
on it?
Maybe just like a quote from RFK.
Okay. Well, I'm just worrying again about any religious complications. That would be on town property.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just, I'm just throwing it out. I mean, again, I approach this.
I think we would have to go into it knowing that
Right.
it could not have any religious
Yeah,
connotation.
it
So it
wouldn't.
would be
Yeah.
another quote about something else or
Yeah,
or
someone
about
asked about
his
it, you may be more
government
prepared to say,
experiences or whatever. I don't know what
Yeah.
the quotes are that you're looking
yeah, don't swear, no, yeah.
at. Or outdoor recreation or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there was one particularly looking at, the ripple of hope quote.
right,
Right,
That
Right.
seemed pretty,
Yep.
pertinent.
right.
I have a text question from someone who's watching. The question is, and I think I know the answer, but I'd rather have you answer it. Is the steeple functional or only aesthetic?
So if you go back to one of the diagrams, it is there. We were thinking there would potentially be a electronic bell
Right.
system inside, but it doubles actually as a light well monitored. So there's a skylight in the top, and what it would do, it was the southern sun would reflect off the northern part of the steeple and come down and kind of bathe the altar in sunlight. So it's functional as for sunlight and lighting, and also potentially as a belfry.
And I have several questions from resident, if I can just read them, and you folks, Tom or Eric, can feel free to respond. Can we get drawings or renderings of what the site and building will look like from the road and from town square? Specifically, how much of the site will be cleared? I don't know if you want to answer that now or wait to town meeting to answer that. I suspect the question will come.
Great question.
Yeah.
So we actually do have a similar rendering we did for another project that we could potentially use for that. And the road, you mean Valley Way.
Valley Road is what I assume.
So that's that night
From the
rendering
bridge.
is from Valley Way.
Okay,
Valley Road.
Valley Road. Again, you may want to just factor that into your
Okay.
presentation. Exactly what legal entity is buying the parcel? If it is legally a chapel/church, then once the lot is sold, does Waterville Valley have any recourse as to what is built there? That's gonna,
So,
yeah,
my understanding from Jack Sanders last week is the 501c3 has been approved.
That's correct.
And what's the title of it? And so it's a registered nonprofit in New Hampshire, but as what? Do you know?
It's just a 501c3 nonprofit. I think the title is the RFK Memorial Chapel.
Okay, but it's not as a religion, it's not under the religious
No,
exemptions, it's under the nonprofit exemption.
that's my understanding. Tom, can you confirm?
No, I can't confirm that. I mean, I don't,
think that's
it
what
probably
Jack-
is, but I don't, I'd be guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
think
need to
that's
double
what,
check
so
that.
let's double check
Yeah.
that and have an answer. That, and then if you guys could email that to me, just so I could get that to the board and we can answer, if we get questions before town meeting.
Yeah.
We have the actual
Sure.
information.
if it is a chapel church, and if so, how will it be, and how will it be open to the public?
So we're thinking it'll be seasonally open. At least to start, the design gives it the ability to be open year round, but to start out, it wouldn't be open in the middle of the winter just for maintenance and access reasons. But it would be open to any faith or denomination to do services. It'd be open for weddings. Potentially be open just for folks to go in there during the day and spend some time reflecting, or just relaxing. So Tom, that's, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's right. Spring, summer, and fall to begin with.
Yeah.
Which does beg the question, well, it doesn't, Mike already asked the question about if you're gonna have scheduled events here, who is gonna actually be operating the facility to be able to, schedule those events?
I believe the committee would be.
Right.
In that.
Yeah, I think it just gets to the question that Mike
Right.
asked.
Well, I mean,
In the succession, it's
It's
not
yeah.
so much the existing committee right now as going into the future, the operation of it.
yeah, I think, I'm now on the committee. There's Chrissy, there's Katie, I think there's a good mix of ages on the committee too. And I think there's kind of a long-term commitment to the committee. So in terms of, looking at it long-term and multi-generational, it's something that you just pull in new committee members with time.
Well, you're gonna need an operational plan, I think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's right. It can't, I
Yeah.
mean, the volunteers will be a big part of it, obviously. But an actual scheduler and cleaning and that sort of thing.
Kind of
is
business
gotta
manager
have
almost.
enough business plan.
Yeah.
If there's gonna be revenue generated from this, and operational costs
And
associated with it.
endowment for the operation.
And the endowment for maintenance, long-term, that sort of thing.
I feel like I'm in a murder board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
If anyone knows
I
what.
feel sorry for Eric.
And
like-
for people who don't understand what a murder board is when you when you make a presentation of people who are trying to help you by asking you the tough questions, so that when you give the formal presentation, you've already got it, right? That's
Yeah.
part of the idea here. I have one more. It's actually a two-part question from this resident. Have you considered asking for or buying land from the White Mountain Athletic Club? They own 3 acres between the facility and the school. Wouldn't it be great to build there and have the space readily available for the school to use?
Yeah,
You
no,
want
that land, I can guarantee you, will be used for White Mountain Athletic Club expansion as we need to expand, which we seem to be getting close to. So,
Very good. Well, I think you may see those questions, potentially may see those questions again, unless you address them in your presentation. I think that's all I have from folks and from myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
I have one other comment on this fire, and I don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do. Let me read this. According to, if the steeple is functional, it makes it a church, not multi-faith. I don't know how true that statement is.
No, steeple had to be.
So
I have no idea.
I mean, it's, yeah, I just,
Respecting the person who sent in the question.
yeah,
Fair enough. We're checking just to be, have it answered. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I mean, it really is more of an architectural feature than it is that a connotation to any religion. That was the intent, at least. You know, it's more to be a unique architectural feature.
Well, and maybe just one thing you could look at is putting those speakers or whatever the bell system is elsewhere in the building and not use the steeple for it, if that's what makes it a functional steeple. So, yeah, who knows?
I kind of like the idea of what you're doing.
Oh, I like the way it looks. I'm just saying whatever the way to solve that issue is, if that is in fact an issue.
I mean, you could call it a skylight monitor instead of steeple, if that helps. You know, there's a good example of that in Washington State, of another chapel that doesn't really have a steeple, has a series of light monitors called, I think, St. Ignatius Chapel. If you want to look at, it was a partial inspiration for this.
All right. Well, I think if you can integrate any of these questions into the presentation, I know there's a lot there, but
To the extent you feel comfortable.
but
I mean, it's your presentation.
right, exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess the question I have for the water and restrooms question, it's the response is very highly dependent on the, you know, because ideally there'd be some sort of a community bathhouse that would be the water sewer down there.
If we can figure.
Yeah,
Right now,
we're talking about looking into things the Forest Service has that doesn't use water.
Okay.
That's completely self-contained, where the waste is burnt and drained and tanked out, just because of the toughness to the regulation.
And I think our timeline, well, it may not matter, because I think we're not looking to a 2027 now.
Okay.
As a potential
that's the year that it's in the CIP.
the CIP to be, funds to be appropriated, or for it to be built by appropriated funds. So that's a long ways out as these things go, as other issues come up, like a wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's helpful. So it's really not something we can depend on.
Not right now, not the way the plan is, not until 2026 or 27.
If that, I mean, if we go to the.
26.
What
was the date you mentioned?
26, 27 for the pavilion bathroom structure.
Okay.
Is where it is in the CIP right now.
I'd actually see that move forward, and we can also petition the planning board to look at that and move it up. The CIP.
Sure.
Committee.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, part of the reason we don't have a bathroom and running water was that we were thinking, that at some point in time that would be adjacent to the chapel, and it's better to have that sort of thing not in the chapel, right? Just to kind of preserve the space for other things. But we can address it in our presentation.
Okay, anything else?
I haven't received any.
Okay. I hope we were helpful.
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
just getting you ready,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
righty. All right, Tom.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Good luck.
See you guys
Thanks.
in a couple weeks.
May take you that long to raise the money anyway.
So 26, 27?
I think
Yeah,
I
you
like
may-
that.
you may-
Yeah, a couple of weeks, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Let's move on our agenda to approval of the minutes from the March meetings. Those have been thoroughly reviewed by Rich and myself, and Sharon made some corrections. So anything else that you saw?
No.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of 3/24, 3/26, and 4/19?
I will make such a motion.
I have a second.
I wasn't here for them.
I will second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Financial reports, Mark.
I didn't see it.
There's nothing out of the ordinary.
Nice to see such simple, easy flow through.
But simple math for simple people. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
any departments, I went over this with Judy, and, you know, we have timing of payments on annual contracts, and our heating and oil is about the only thing right now that's running ahead of what we had budgeted.
Did you guys wear sweaters?
Well, we at least have the windows fixed now, so the snow stopped coming in. So that's good.
Those are fixed windows?
No, not these, the ones upstairs.
Okay. I was gonna
These
say.
are next.
Yes.
But no, everything else is tracking very well.
Okay. All right. Department heads, it looks like we don't have Brooke today, so why don't we start with Jim? Because Jim always gets to go last, so we'll let him go first today.
Oh, I get to go early. Not too much exciting happening on our end, just we're finally, things are drying out, so we're finally able to get cleanups going at the cemetery and the library and the pump houses. And roadsides will be next. We did tackle the entrance sign today, and just doing some road patching and general repair on equipment as needed. We did get the new plow truck back from some warranty work we had to have done. And we've been outfitting that with fenders and whatnot that we purchased a few months ago. And we didn't have the opportunity to get them on, but they're on now. So other than that, things are going well. Just hoping for some rain, much needed rain.
Okay, great. Does somebody have their hand up in Zoom? Somebody has their hand raised. Okay. Yeah, Chris?
Good afternoon. Don't have a whole lot to report. I mean, as far as a COVID update, we all see the numbers, and we're seeing a downturn again, which is a good trend. The vaccine numbers are good. Many of our personnel are spending a lot of time vaccinating people at the National Guard sites in Plymouth and Laconia and beyond. So that's going well. I'm glad we can help out with that effort. We're working on transitioning into the summer season, or the better weather season, I should say. Summer might be still a ways away, but we're celebrating that with our first carry out on Welch Dickey yesterday. And we're starting to see the trails being used a lot. So we're kind of doing some education and some coordinating with local departments and resources on our search and rescue on the trails. Also, this morning, Corporal Andy Vermeersch worked his final shift. He's still an employee until Sunday. So we sent him off with a nice little lunch and a plaque, and I'm sure we'll still see him around town. So I just want to go on to thanking Andy for his 17 years of service, fantastic service to the town, and specifically the Department of Safety here. He was a great person to have around, and
He's going to
we
continue
wish
to
him.
come back when we need him occasionally, right?
Yeah. He's gonna, right now he's gonna focus on his transition and his new position in Plymouth. So I believe he's going to take some time off just to focus on that and make sure the transition goes well. But yes, it's, we're going to miss him. And again, just a thank you to him.
And every dog in town also miss him.
That's right.
Because he is the dog whisperer. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, what about COVID? With the news yesterday, we've had just a slight discussion about this, but we might need to adjust our mask resolution to reflect that there are new rules for those of us who are fully vaccinated.
Yeah, I guess new guidelines. I don't know if they're rules, but yeah, that's a discussion for the board. And I don't have any particular opinion on it. Just whatever the guidance says, I'm good with that. I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking that we could probably put an attachment onto our resolution that shows whatever the current CDC guidance is. I love the thing that they did with vaccinated people on one side and unvaccinated and indoor, outdoor. I think that's very communicative. I think, it says what needs to be said. And if they then update it, we can always change the addendum and put the new one in. It's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, there are some statements in the resolution that I think have been overcome by changes. And I think we should redline the resolution, and you should look to re-adopt it with some changes.
Okay.
But I think whether we do that prior to town meeting so that we can address if there are any questions at town meeting, that might be a good idea. So maybe in a quick meeting we could do some edits, circulate it, and then have a quick board meeting on the 10th or the Friday before town meeting, so that we could have something in place, which would also go to answering Tim's questions about the signs.
Right.
And because I wouldn't want to commit to signage until you know what the changes
What the guidelines are.
What the guidelines are.
And did I hear there was going to be an announcement on the change of New Hampshire guidelines on the
7th of May.
Yeah, I think
Is that when they're gonna come
Why
out?
don't we table this till the 7th and see what the New Hampshire guidelines are?
Right.
And try to reconvene between the 7th and 11th.
Right.
How about that, Chris? Does that sound good? Because the
I think
governor
that
spoke. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's next week, right?
Yeah.
Next.
That sounds fantastic. And I think just like Margaret said, it's a great idea, just a resolution supporting the latest CDC guidelines or state guidelines. I think that's a great way to go.
So Thursday, the 7th, the new guidelines come out. We can look at it, redline the resolution, come up with modifications, and then have a board meeting on the 10th.
Okay.
On Monday the 10th.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
I think it could be much more simple of recalling the original resolution and then just putting the new one out, just kind of a simple couple of paragraph or a paragraph.
Will end up being that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it will be, because there's a lot of stuff in that original resolution that I don't think will apply.
Be applicable anymore.
Right.
Right.
I guess I understand now what you mean by red line. I was thinking red line as editing, but that red line means recalling it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Recalling
Yep.
and putting out something new. Yep.
And I think the important thing for everybody to remember now, even based on the CDC guidelines that came out yesterday, is that they continue to recommend that everybody wear a mask when indoors. The only caveat being that if you were in a group of fully vaccinated people and you are maintaining your social distance, or if you were eating, you do not have to have a mask on, which is why you see all these fully vaccinated people up here with no masks on at the moment. So I think that's important, and that is very important for our business people, that folks continue to follow their guidelines, which basically all request and insist that if you're going to enter their property, you need to have a mask on. That's what their rule is, and the selectmen certainly support the businesses having their rules and having their rules adhered to. So,
which the state will be speaking to as well, I would imagine.
Well, and I think that's exactly what the state's
It's very
guidance
good.
is gonna be,
Be
is
specific.
it's up to,
The businesses.
they're lifting the government requirements
Right.
and leaving it up to the private business and private people within a recommended framework. So I think that's what you're gonna see in Mason.
all righty, Dylan, what's happening?
Not too much, Margaret, thank you. Not much to report. As we're slow right now in terms of flow, we don't have much stormwater infiltrating the sewer system or anything like that. We've been chipping away at small projects that we've had to do around here. Replace a caustic barrel today, cut out some of the ductwork that was starting to fall apart, repaired an aeration line up in the lagoons. So it's just been really getting to things that we had been putting off since we were shorthanded for a bit, and now we're able to get to them. As Jim had said, we're definitely going to need this rain. Hopefully it comes through. They're forecasting the next 9 days, 7 of those days are supposed to get rain. So hopefully that ends up happening and doesn't just fall apart like last weekend where we were supposed to get an inch of rain and we barely got any. But short of that, everything's going good over here.
And I did include the water sewer numbers in the packet, if you saw them, Dylan. We're tracking about 50% down from last year, which was down from 2019.
What about the repairs, Dylan?
What was
The
that?
repairs? The repairs.
So you're talking about on the raw line. I had spoke with Jeff Todd of Apex Construction on Monday, sent him an email. He's getting the other two companies, which are Tedberry Corporation and Hayes Pump, coordinated, and he's going to get back to us with a date that they can all be up here, because it's going to not be just a one day.
Right.
It's going to be a multiple.
But have they been up and given you an estimate at
29,000.
But what actually is, so we know what's wrong, we know what to fix and all that, it's just getting all three of them up here to fix it.
Well, we don't know what's wrong yet. What the first step is to camera, our idea anyways, is to camera the line, and while they're cameraing the line, we're going to replace a raw pump that's on its last leg and needs to be replaced. We already have it on hand anyhow. But when they camera the line is when we'll discover whether or not there's actually an issue with the line, or how severe the issue is, and then that'll, lead us to the next step of what we have to do.
No, I don't.
29,000 is to get us to the point where if we camera it and there's a break in the line, there'll be additional costs above the 29
Right.
to dig up the line and repair it. But we can't get an estimate for that until the camera
No,
does it.
I've got you. I was
So-
just wondering how it's progressed, as
Twenty-
the people been out to look at their.
We have, yep. And Dylan's working, like he said, trying to get the three companies up here.
Yeah.
For the same 2 or 3 day period is what's causing the delay.
I had a couple
go
quick
for it.
things. Dylan, did I read or Mark, did I read the chart correctly that we're down 3 million gallons in wastewater for 21?
3 million to date, you mean?
To date, yes.
A crop for the year.
No, it looks like it was to date if I'm reading the.
It is, but that's, most of that, if not all of it,
Is
is
it that was my
because the
next
rain.
question.
The precipitation difference here
Right.
is for that same time period. So that's what I was saying. We're almost 50%.
50, yeah, and
Lower,
it's
right.
2/3 lower than
And it's
29.
that's right,
Yeah, which
That's right.
raises another,
right.
right. And
Okay,
I'm assuming
so-
2019 is a good
and so-
comparison year.
Yeah, 2019 was pretty typical precipitation wise, right, Jim?
Yeah, 2019, looking back, 2019 was right on par with 2018 and 2017. They were within a few inches of each other precipitation wise.
Unfortunately, good comparison, yeah.
So, yes, we are tracking about 3.4 million gallons less in treated wastewater, but that's with the 6 inches less precipitation.
Yeah.
And if you do 6 times 92,000, that's a lot.
Okay. I get it now.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure, so I
Yeah.
thought I would skip. Thank you.
And anything else? Okay. Alrighty, we don't have rec department here today.
No. The
Anything?
rec is closed for vacation. They're doing the gym floor.
Okay.
And so nothing going on there this
Okay.
week.
Alrighty.
I will say that she's hired most of the staff for the summer. We have folks identified. She's been doing interviews. And the new full-timer will begin Monday.
Excellent. Alrighty, moving on then, calendar review, our town meeting again, May 11th at the Ice Arena at 5:30 in the evening. Our next regular meeting will be May 12th at 3 p.m. We will be here in person at Town Hall. And participants will probably be on Zoom and watchers will be on YouTube. Planning board meeting, next one is on May 13th, 2021.
And that's 8 a.m. by Zoom.
8 a.m. by Zoom. Okay. All right, on to new business, real estate exemption renewal for WBBBTS.
And so this is an annual recognition of their status as a nonprofit educational institution so that they can get their education exemption. So unless you have questions, it would be to just recognize the application as presented, give them that exempt status.
Okay, is that something we?
You
just
don't
need to
sign
sign?
it, you just need to, if you want to vote on it, so that we have it in the record that you've accepted the BTLA form, and you're going to continue their exemption status. That would be all.
Okay, so I move that we accept the BTLA form from WBBBTS and continue their exempt status. Can I have a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Draft language for town meeting packet.
Yep, so I had sent that out to you via email, and I have it here. It was late, it was early afternoon when I sent it, so you can review it.
Okay.
The biggest question when you're doing your review, and department heads, you also have it, so if there's anything on there that you question, please let me know, all right? The biggest thing is with regards to the overall Article 22, the overall budget, the operating budget. There's a page after the original motion for the amendment that we discussed. So we just will need to decide, you'll need to decide how we're going to approach the amendment for the water project by the Red River. Are we going to do an amendment to the capital line item in the operating budget to account for the what the engineer is seeing in the bid returns?
Have we seen bid returns?
Yes,
I haven't. heard of these.
yeah, I will forward you what he has sent me.
Okay.
But they're running, I think we talked about it before, they're running about 15%
20%
higher than their engineer estimates right now. And one of the projects that was 1.7, $1.8 million project estimated cost, they didn't get any bids. And when they asked contractors why, the contractors did not have the capacity to bid. Contractors are short personnel, and I've heard, from, if you read articles about the business communities, not just in New Hampshire, it's New England and
We were
nationwide.
south and it was the same thing.
Yeah, so there is a lack of trained staff to be able to bid on some of these projects. So I don't know, any thoughts or general thoughts on
This is all kind of new to me. I wasn't informed of this situation.
We had discussed it.
I thought you were at the meeting when we discussed it.
We talked about things coming up, but we haven't talked about receiving bids.
Oh, no.
Well, we haven't done any bidding yet.
That's what I was wondering
Yeah,
about.
no, it isn't our bids. No,
Wait.
these are bids
Oh, no,
that
no, I get you, I get you.
has seen.
The situation
Over
could
the last
lead
few
to
months.
that we're gonna
That's
see a
correct.
15 to 20%
That's correct.
increase in bids,
That's right.
if we even get a bid.
If we get it right. That's right.
Yeah. Oh,
And
no,
so-
okay, I thought I.
So
that
we
I- that I missed
remember
something completely.
the number that the cost estimate that we're using is
Right.
about 18 months old right now. And we have the money on hand to do the project.
Right.
But we're afraid that we would put this out to bid and we would be short. So the idea here is that we would amend the capital outlay
Right.
line item specifically for the project, the water system improvement project. And then that
On the
would
floor,
get taxed, that would get done on the floor at town meeting. So that amendment is in your packet
Is in the
for you
package
to
for review.
consider.
Okay. All right. So we're going to review that, and how do we give our feedback?
Do you just want to send me an email?
Okay.
Providing that. And I will send this also to Joan as soon as we have a draft that you guys are comfortable with, so that she has it. as well as moderator. I think she gets back next week.
She's back.
But she is back. Okay, well, I'll talk to her either Friday.
The next item that we have under new business is guidance on dumpster removal requests and requirements.
I read that. Was that incongruous under the paperwork we received on it? It didn't say why. It didn't say.
Well, that was my
where.
point back to her.
Yeah, and there wasn't a
I think
response.
I'm
There
sorry.
There wasn't a reasonable response to it. Am I correct?
No, she has not sent
Oh,
anything
okay, I
back
was
to
just-
me.
Okay.
I provided
catch up
you,
here.
yep, no, I provided you
Yeah.
with my response to the inquiry
Right.
about how do we terminate our dumpster at our condo association.
Well, does it say dumpster or dumpster enclosure? That's what had me confused.
The idea was to get rid of the dumpster.
Okay, because
Yeah.
it said enclosure, so I was wondering, it didn't specify whether they wanted to keep a dumpster. or
No, they do not
Yeah,
want
you
to.
can't.
No, they do
Oh,
not.
no,
want-
I'm puzzled.
You're right. Oh, Jim is on the phone. No, the inquiry has been, we want to bring our trash here to Central. And we want to get rid of our dumpster at our condo
Right,
association.
and the problem with that is that capacity here, if.
Right, so
Right.
first of all, that came from an individual, it did not come from the association, there was no, so I instructed that we would need something from the
Right.
association that showed that that was their decision collectively. And then, yes, then we get to the question of capacity here at the central transfer station.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Is that going to be a trend? This is.
Well, that's
Yeah.
just
And
it.
does this person
and
have
that's
the
what
right
I'm
to
asking.
speak? Do their bylaws say that they can, yeah.
Well, that's
We don't
why
even
I
know.
asked that the contact come from the association board and that there be some record or certification that there had been
A vote or-
discussion and a vote
Whatever the
by
con-
the
Whatever the
association.
condo.
Right, whatever
docs
their
require.
rules are, yeah.
So
Um,
let's take
so-
this down another step.
Yeah.
What if this group wants it out, then 3 years from now, another group wants it in?
Right.
And we've taken down the,
Well,
does that, it should be specified
So-
that to return one will be at their expense?
so the other issue here is there's a site plan approval
I was about to
of a
say,
condo association
right,
That requires a
building
dumpster.
that has a dumpster that was approved as part of the site plan
right, isn't that where it's approved?
application process.
Right,
That's
so what's in the
So-
site plan
Yeah.
application that was approved? Were
The
they,
site, the dumpster enclosure and dumpster.
for this
that they have.
particular
Yes, they all
condo?
have,
Well,
they all have,
right, so it's more than just a
It's more
practical
than-
question.
that's right. And the ordinances adopted by town meeting require these places to have dumpsters.
And how long ago was that ordinance report?
2 years ago.
Yeah, we
2 or 3
re-upped
years
it a
ago,
couple-
We just
right.
renewed.
A couple years
So-
ago.
I think that if we
So wouldn't they
were,
have to go in front of the planning board first to
Well-
request a modification, what, I'm sure the correct word is.
there's no regulation, there's no
Right.
layout of how you modify what has been approved when it comes to dumpsters. The ordinance is silent on it. It doesn't say,
Yeah, well,
here's how you do it.
you can't figure out every eventuality.
No,
No,
but
you can't.
what does
No,
it say
you
with
can't,
regard to
but-
site plan review? If you
Well-
want to change, you have to go through,
You would have to
Process.
modify your site plan
Right.
approval.
right,
But in the site plan approval, these dwellings require a specific amount of dumpster
Yes,
and for how
Then-
many units?
yes.
that's what we're
That's
saying,
right.
so my
Yeah, oh,
question
no,
is.
I understand exactly
Right.
what you're saying.
Is
So
it's not just a question of a letter. to
Well, no,
us.
that would even be the start. But
Yeah,
yes, all these other questions would have to be answered.
especially if others want to do this.
That's
right,
right.
and who has the ultimate authority to do that? If it says, by the way, we run, the planning board does one thing, but we're the enforcement authority.
That's right.
Right,
So
So that is what I am asked. How do you want me to start investigating this? Do you want to keep it under the ordinance and enforcement? Do you want to start asking questions as far as site plan approval and how you modify terms of the
But-
site plan approval? Or
but can site plan approval be reasonably withheld? What is, this is a totally different precedent when it comes to the planning board now, where the planning
Right.
board would have to say that, no, this condo association has an approval from the town to be a condo association in this format.
it would
and this
stipulate
format
a,
stipulates you have to have a dumpster.
that's what I'm
That's
saying,
right.
right.
Oh, yeah,
So-
no, I'm just putting it,
Right, so I see, that's why I said, I think you'd have to go in front of the planning board and
Yeah.
and request a change to that.
and then it would be up to the selectmen to see if it's viable commercial.
And that's our, that's,
Viable
That's
from a
part of the
operational
review,
standard.
that's part of the review by the planning
As well.
board before they approve it.
Yeah.
You know, can we operationally?
right,
So they
Well, I
would
think
seek the advice of the select board as to what the impact would be on town
I would hope that
operations
they
as
would.
part of
Right.
their decision.
yeah.
But it would go even further than the planning board decision making. What features does a condominium have to do to exist in the town to maintain the balance in the town?
Right,
Yeah.
and see, this is also a question with our new development that is now before the planning board.
Right,
With regard, because the discussion has already started at the planning board about the dumpster enclosure at that new development. And so I was also seeking your guidance on whether you want town staff or the ex officio member to say something about the need for the enclosure out there.
the developer intends to put an enclosure
He
in a
does,
dumpster.
but there
Well,
were,
that's neither here nor there for this point we're talking about. I think we need to throw this to the planning board. They have to go before the planning board to discuss this before they can come to us.
okay, I can.
Because it is, as you mentioned, it is a huge feature of their site plan.
It is, yeah, it's in there, so, yeah, I think we have to be very careful because if we don't follow, not that I stand on procedure, guys, but if we don't follow the right procedure, what prevents the next person from complaining to us that they have to follow procedure, but you just said, okay, to,
But I'm
Somebody
suggesting
else.
the procedure would go because it affects the site plan.
yes, I'm
That
saying we do need
can't-
the procedure.
We can't make a ruling or advise on it
I'm
until the
agreeing.
site plan has been reviewed by the planning board and discussed by the planning.
That's right, and then just determine whether or not this particular condo association wants to come in front of the planning board, revise per
Their site plan approval.
the site plan approval.
Right, and then it would come.
And then it comes to this discussion between us and the
The
planning.
operational thing, but I think the site plan was what granted, you know, it's one of the features that grant the condominium.
Right.
Its right to be where it is.
So the consensus is that this request should go to the planning board,
Okay.
which should then contact the association if they want to follow through and say, you need to come in front of us
Well,
to
no,
discuss
I'm
why
gonna-
you're going
I'm
to
gonna go
review
to
it.
the association and
And
tell
say-
them that you need to go to the planning.
Yeah, that's what I
board
mean, in front of the
For a
planning
site
board,
plan
review,
application. and-
revision or whatever, the review or revision or whatever it is, if you want to do
The
this.
suggestion I would also make, Mark, is that if you're going before the planning board, you need an authorization from the association to bring the article before the
Right,
planning
yes.
board. Right, to bring it up.
Well, but
It has
that
to
would
be
be up to
illegal.
the planning.
Yeah, but it has to be a legal
It has
entity
to be a
anyway.
legal entity.
Right,
It's
that's
specified.
why I'm saying it has to be.
Yeah.
Your association would have to apply to the planning
Right.
board for a modification of your site
So
plan.
complicated. I thought it was just small print.
Well, it's
Yeah, you would-
important given that
downstream,
it
yeah.
can
Impact
impact
legally,
others.
legally
Right.
and operationally.
Okay. Good. We will do that.
Okay.
Now, but the other part of that, so that's
Yes.
the existing one that has come and asked about getting rid of an existing dumpster.
But you want me
Now,
to,
what is some guidance, what is your guidance for either Rich or I with because we already know that people have started talking about a dumpster enclosure at the new development. So what's the board's position on the requirement right now that we have? Or is it something you would waive? Is it something you absolutely would not waive?
Well, I
What
think
is
it needs to go to the planning board before it comes to us.
No, it's before the planning board.
But what is
That's
the
what I'm
question?
the question is do we, what is our opinion on having a dumpster in a new condo development?
I haven't even thought about
And I think,
it. And I have to recuse myself from this.
okay, well, I think there's, I'll take that.
That's Jim.
Yeah. So the question is then, from an operational standpoint, what would you recommend with regard to a new condo development that's going to have 13 units? I said, yeah, from an operational standpoint. And the developer has already noted that he is going to put in one dumpster. And has already, I believe, had discussions about
Yeah,
making
with
sure
him.
that, with you, Jim, about making sure that everything was aligned properly so you can back the truck up to it, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's correct. I have had those discussions with him because they wanted those smaller roll-away dumpsters contained in a garage.
That gatehouse they wanted to build or whatever
And
it was.
they, you know, that's problematic because what am I gonna do? You know, my guys are gonna have to open the garage door and roll it out. How are we gonna do that in the winter time? Number one. But number two, then we get into how come you got one, but the other, you know, they're filled or they're not filled. We gotta have some capacity. So if this, I'll just throw this out there. If we don't require the 13 condo development to have a dumpster with an enclosure, then we have to make room down here. And all of those people who I'm assuming aren't always full-time and may or may not be renters would have to bring the trash down here. Or the condo association would have to make some accommodation to transport it down here to Central in order to dispose of it. So I think the easiest thing for everybody is if they can cite an enclosure with a 8 or a 10-yard dumpster that the truck can easily access, from an operational standpoint, that is the easiest thing for us. It makes the most sense.
Jim, do we still have village condominiums transporting their trash down here, or do we go in and pick it up there?
We go in and pick it up.
Okay.
But do they also transport as well?
I have not seen village down here for quite some time. Now, maybe some residents of village bring their own down here. We don't keep track of that.
Because there was a time when village was transporting their trash down here, right?
That's correct.
And they don't do that anymore, so.
Well, that's because, yeah, that's back when, you know, there was trash disposal in the little bike huts.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to that time. Now they've built a nice enclosure. They've got the dumpsters all set, and we just go and pick it up.
Okay. All right, well, you know, you're on the planning board. It
Right.
seems to me that from an operational perspective, that the town should require to have an 8 or 10-yard dumpster inside an enclosure as being the easiest thing for us. And that takes into account that we don't have any more space down here to put in additional dumpsters. And it makes it easy for us to use the truck and to get rid of the trash.
I'm in full agreement with that.
Okay.
Good. So I will so inform. Yep. Planning is good.
And you were recusing yourself because?
Because I have a relationship with the developer at the time.
Oh, okay, I got you. All righty. On to old business, the COVID sign renewals. This came up at the community meeting on Tuesday. I don't see Tim here. I mean, in general, Dr. Waite was recommending that we put them up again. And I think that they need to be up again, but there may need to be some modifications.
Yeah, I think let's wait and see what the state comes out with. I guess they saved most of or all of the signs,
Mhm.
but the
How
language
much did
maybe
we
gets.
spend on those signs? How much was our share?
Couple thousand.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
I polled a bunch of people today on the question.
Oh, please.
And most of the people want some sort of signage.
all right.
But they all agree we should wait until we see what the guideline is before we.
That sort of sounds like a reasonable.
It's a two-sided way.
Yeah.
Meaning we want some kind of signage, but we want our guests to feel a return to as much of normalcy. whatever the new
Especially
normalcy is.
Outdoor activities.
Coming here,
We don't want
especially
to be-
people are not coming here to go to indoor activities.
That's right.
Except for maybe weddings and hockey.
Right.
And
And
Yeah, so-
there's the other complication, unless it's changed, that basically there's a federal law that says when you're on federal land, you have to be wearing a mask if you're
Well,
gonna be.
there's some question as to
Yeah.
what the CDC recommendations did to that.
Right. I think that was an executive order as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
well, it'll have to sort itself out, I suppose. but-
Yeah.
on the
But I
bright
mean-
side of things, we're not expecting a lot of people in before the 11th.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
and-
the
and that's
Memorial
just
Day.
it.
So we've
That's
got
the
time.
other thing
Yeah.
is I think we have some time, although Tim did say that there are a lot of people questioning about getting the signs up, kind of like what Margaret said.
Right.
And I think a good way to approach it is wait until May 7th. Let's see what the state guidance is. Have
Digest
the
that.
meeting on May
Yeah.
10th, and then we can give them
See what
a
happens. What we want for our mandate or our recommendation and then go to the signs.
Okay. Recycling and renewable energy.
I
Okay.
just wanted, we have a municipal solid waste committee meeting next week. They're continuing to work on several different things right now. Maybe we'll have recommendations at your next meeting or within the next month or so. Renewable energy, They're also working on several projects. There is some legislative changes with community power and net metering that are still to be finally voted on, either in the House or the Senate, because of bills that had crossed over from the other side. So there were a couple of things that were still outstanding that could impact what they do for the rest of the year. But both committees are, I just want to make you guys aware that both committees are working actively and looking to try to come up with things for the
Okay.
town.
Okay. Capital projects update?
We already talked about the sewer treatment plant with Dylan. Basically, we're just waiting for the contractor to come in. We are waiting for a response from the landowner on the easement for the water line along the Nave River, so that we have received feedback on the initial wetlands permit application from DES. There were probably 10 to 12 things that they wanted clarification on from the engineer, and the engineer has provided that. We have not heard back from those clarifications, so the wetlands permit is still in process. And we can't really complete any other planning or anything, right, Jim, Dylan, until we get that wetlands permit finalized. So that is still in process.
And we've heard nothing from the EPA on our other.
Nothing, we have not received anything that, see the shaking heads. So we're waiting to hear back from them. We are continuing to work on our Northern Borders grant application, which is for the wastewater treatment plant project now, for about $2 million. So we will try to get that completed. We have until the middle of May to do that.
Okay. And I'm not sure the public is aware that Senator or Representative Custer
Yeah.
is taking one of our projects forward.
That's right. Our road repaving project has been submitted by Congresswoman Custer to the House Transportation Committee for a possible grant, 80-20 grant. So 80% federal money, 20% town money on $1.2 million. So that's a significant amount of money.
Surely there's got to be something out of those trains of dollars floating around for a little water go back.
And we will continue to pursue this.
We will continue to pursue that free money up there.
So, well, not so free.
Not so free.
It's not
You
free.
know,
But yeah,
I put air quotes around.
yeah.
Okay, review new legislation status.
Yes, so you have the list, and we didn't get a chance to talk about them at the last meeting. The constitutional, that's good. Senate Bill 95, which is the continuation of remote meetings. So basically, they took the language in the emergency orders and codified it under the right to know law and made changes. That has passed the Senate and it's waiting for a hearing at the House Judiciary Committee on May 4th. And we'll see what happens during that committee hearing. House Bill 108, which was a requirement to track non-public minutes in a certain manner. It expanded the requirements for the maintenance of tracking non-public minutes. Passed, and it's in the Senate right now. It seems to have support, and we believe it might pass the Senate.
And what is the impact?
Just additional administrative work to track them, because we do
We track
non-public
them
minutes.
anyway. Yeah.
Well, yes, right, it's just how setting up a new system for actually tracking the bills and what are the minutes and what is in them. And you have to provide that information to any right to know law request. House Bill 111 changes public officials and public employees liability. That was tabled. So it effectively has been killed for this session, but it could come up next year. Bill 155, Senate Bill 155 has had amendments, non-germane amendments, which means a separate topic was amended onto the bill. The amendments that were made forbid towns from requiring people to be vaccinated to be on staff, and it forbids towns, these are the amendments now, forbids towns from contracting with businesses that require their employees to be vaccinated. So it has nothing to do, I forget what the topic of Senate Bill 155 even was, but it had a hearing today. I've not heard the outcome of the hearing in the House.
Wasn't one of these bills, though, something that basically took away the town's ability to make its own rules?
That was defeated. That was
defeated.
turned down. Yes,
All right.
voted down. House Bill 232, non-public discussions on land sale, has passed the House. So as an example, the discussions, negotiations with Chapel Committee would have to be done publicly. As of right now, under 91A, if it's a land transfer, the actual negotiation discussions can be in non-public. This would change that. It passed the House pretty decisively, and so I don't know what the Senate will do with that.
Certainly weekends are.
It does, because you have to talk about
Negotiations are out in the open.
House Bill 307, firearms on public land, has passed the House. This forbids towns from making any ordinance prohibiting the carrying of weapons on public land. It is not clear.
The example there was Packard's Field.
Packard's Field.
Yeah.
And discharge is the more concerning thing, because as long as you meet the other state laws, like being more than 300 feet away from an occupied building, etc., you also cannot make any ordinance forbidding the discharge of firearms on public land. So, concerning bill that has passed the House, I don't know what the status is in the Senate, but it is at the Senate now. And then House Bill 544 was tabled. It was about decisive issues. Training was ridiculous in its requirements, but it was tabled, so we don't.
Divisive or decisive?
Divisive, actually.
Divisive.
Divisive.
And the really good news is all bills relating to education funding have been either voted down or tabled in both the House and the Senate. So there is nothing right now that went to crossover, other than the House Bill 1, which is the state budget. The state budget includes a $100 million reduction in tax rates for the statewide education property taxes. Okay, so they would lower the rate so that the effect would be to reduce the overall cost of the sweat by $100 million. That was to be paid for by operating budget cuts in the state operating budget. So even though they have passed this amendment reducing the sweat by $100 million, no one has detailed in any way where the money is going to come from. So the money could come, as an example, and NHMA is arguing this, from other sources of municipal revenue sharing, like our highway aid and bridge aid, or other state programs that help municipalities. That's one place that the money could come from. So that's the only bill that could still be a little concerning with regards to education.
Okay, board concerns and directives.
I would just mention that I think I sent you guys the official census numbers are out.
Yes. Well, we
New
haven't
Hampshire's
seen
out.
it yet. We're out.
Well, the state is out
state is
to
out.
1.337, I think it is, but I don't think it's till September before they get down to the counties and towns. So we'll see if we're still at 200 and whatever.
Yeah,
What was it in 2010?
223.
223? Yeah, that would not be good. Hopefully it's closer to reality.
I hope so.
Okay. Any correspondence?
No.
Well, you want to talk about the
Oh,
increased valuation?
valuation, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Equalized valuation. I did put the sheet in at the end of your packet. I talked a little bit to Mike about this. I don't know, Mike, you wanna talk to it, or?
Explain.
Like, what happened is they looked at us and our value of town has gone up by $17 million,
Which is 5%.
5%, which affects our equalization numbers where we were at 96%. Now we're at very close to 91. So the reality is going to be that we're going to face a full reval sooner than later, which I think is good. And this is kind of a unique number here because it's not really based on any of the new construction coming up.
That's right.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the new reval says. And I think we have an opportunity in this new reval to really correct some things that have been flawed in the past. Our problem in the past has been we've had so many few sales in specific areas that they couldn't get an accurate sample.
And now we've had the sales.
And now we've had the sales, but we can also extrapolate sales from other areas to show the new numbers and equalize this. As some of us know, some of the taxes in town are not quite right for the properties. And I think this gives us an opportunity to get it right and keep it right for the next 5 years or so.
I think the number of sales is really going to help us in the next reval because we're going to have data like we've never had before.
Like an
I mean,
example,
since 2006 probably is the last time.
the last reval, we had a bunch of sales in, say, Tyler Springs. So Tyler Springs was affected dramatically because there were a bunch of sales to make it go. Other complexes didn't have the number of sales. So the assessors couldn't come in and create a median or a mean sale because there weren't enough to come up with it. So I think it's going to be beneficial in equalizing the town's tax rate.
And I'd just like to point out for people that are listening, this document does not mean that we're changing values at all right now. The reval that we're talking about would happen in 2022 or 2023.
If we can get away with it.
Yeah. So just want to make that clear. We're not modifying anything because of this. But the numbers are showing that our property values are going up.
Okay.
I want to make sure
For
that
today.
a text from someone at home.
Right.
Okay,
Excellent, thank you.
we need to go into non-public. It is 4:32, so can I have a motion to go into non-public?
I will make that motion.